Hi, stats students. Today let's rewind. What did we learn last time we met? Last time we met, we learned how to sample, right? So we learned how to do something called a simple random sample and a stratified random sample. Those are used when we want to gain information through the use of an observational study. It means I just want information from people. I don't want to see if one thing causes another, okay? Just strictly, I want information and I can draw conclusions based off that information. Now, if we want to establish causation, that one thing causes another, we do an experiment, okay? Our goal in this video is that I can design and draw an outline for a simple experiment in detail. My question of interest right now, does how much you sleep at night affect your grades? We're going to keep that in mind while we're talking about it, okay? So what I could do is I could run an experiment and I could do something called a completely randomized design. This is where the treatments are assigned to all experimental units completely by chance. First of all, what is an experimental unit? That is what is being tested. And if it's a person, we call them subjects, okay? So you can imagine now, in this idea here, I want to see how much sleep you get a night affect your grades. I'm not doing an observational study. I actually have to give a treatment. So you can imagine we have our class. Okay, we have our class. What I'm going to do is I'm going to randomly give you a treatment. As a statistician, I'm going to decide what that treatment is going to be. Okay, well, I want to know if sleep is going to affect our grades. So sleep is going to be that treatment. We also know it as an explanatory variable. We've learned that before. We're wondering if it influences our grades, okay? So this is our treatment. And as a statistician, okay, now we're gonna play pretend right now. I want you to imagine I'm the statistician running the experiment. I'm gonna decide, hey, I have our class right now. I'm gonna randomly, okay, that's the chance part right there. Say half of you are gonna get 5 hours of sleep a night, and the other half, you're going to get 8 hours of sleep a night. What I just did is I randomly assigned treatments to you, my subjects, okay? So again, I already talked about what are experimental units. Experimental units are the individuals to which treatments are being applied. If they're human, we call them subjects. We talked about this treatment. The treatment is a condition applied to the individuals in an experiment. It is that explanatory variable, the variable that helps explain a result. Okay, now the response variable is the outcome we're measuring. So in this case, what is our response variable? Our response variable is our grades. So I'm going to take this class, I'm going to randomly put you in a 5-hour group a night or an 8-hour group a night. And then what I'm going to do from there is I want to measure your grades. Now, to make this a good experiment, I probably would want to do it over a certain amount of time, okay? And we'll talk about that more. So our goal, though, is to outline a simple experiment. So what is that experiment going to look like? Okay, what is that experiment going to look like? When we do an outline, it's going to look something like this. We start at the beginning, okay? We just start at the beginning. And let me just get... In this box here, this is our subjects or our units. So in our example here, right, let me move this up just a tiny bit and change the color. In our example here, our subjects would be our stats class, right? Members. Now, what's going to happen? They need to randomly get to certain groups. Okay, so if I have let's pretend that we have 30 kids in our class, right? 30 kids here. I'm going to make this look a little nicer. I want it to fit all in that one box there. Let's see if I can get it. Should we call that close enough? There we go. Okay, we have 30 kids. Well, we're going for a 5-hour group or an 8-hour group. Again, I'm making this experiment up. So to outline an experiment, the next thing we need in this box is how many groups we're going to have. And we're going to have 2 different groups. Now, sometimes you might have 3 different groups. You'd have another arrow coming out of the middle. Sometimes you'd have 4 groups. You'd have 4 arrows coming out. How many groups you have are dependent on how many treatments you have. So this is where we put the groups, okay? So group 1 And then here's going to be group 2. Now, you want to make sure that you say how big this group is, okay? So in this case, if I have 30 kids in the group right here, I'd break it up and I'd say n equals 15 kids here and n equals 15 kids here. So I want to keep that consistent. Now, once they're in that group, and again, remember, they randomly get there, okay? So we're going to put a little arrow here, and that's going to remind us that we need a random assignment. Now, if you're asked how to randomize, we know how to randomize using a random number table, okay? Or you could talk about the hat method. I've talked about the hat method before with you guys, just briefly in the other videos, but that's where I would put every kid's name on an equal size sheet of paper, put it in a hat, shake it up. The first 15 kids, they would go to group 1. The second 15 kids, they would go to group 2. The hat method is an okay way to say how they're going to randomly get to the different groups. Once they're in their groups, then what you have to do is you have to tell us what the treatments will be. So we have treatment 1, and then we have treatment 2. So our treatment 1 is something I made up again. Remember, I made up this example. Treatment 1 would be 5 hours of sleep. And then treatment 2, that would be the 8 hours of sleep. And then finally, we have to measure our response. What are we going to look at? Okay, so we want to put a time frame usually. And that time frame, we would say after, let's say 8 weeks, we'll look at grades or summative assessment grades. How about? That's so big. Let me make this fit into the box. That's about as close as I'm going to get, okay? So when you are asked for a completely randomized design, this is what I'm looking for. Let's quickly go through an example together, okay? And I already have it outlined out, so I'll just read through it and we'll go through what I would expect on the test. Most people know that drunk driving is dangerous. Even so, some drivers are cited multiple times for driving while intoxicated. Is there anything that can be done to change their behavior? An experiment was designed to help answer this question. The subjects were 300 people convicted of drunk driving 3 times in 1 year. The treatment imposed after the 3rd conviction were a fine plus suspended jail sentence, okay? All right, so first things first, everyone is going to jail and everyone is getting one more thing. It's either no treatment, attend an alcoholism clinic, so that's like a day thing where they learn about alcoholism, or participate in Alcoholics Anonymous. Use a diagram to outline the design of the experiment. So the first thing we want to do is we want to start with our subjects. Who are we dealing with? And we're dealing with the 300 people who were convicted of drunk driving. So that's where I'm going to start, okay? 300 people who were convicted of drunk driving 3 times in 1 year. Next, what I need to do is I need to break them up into groups, okay? Just like we have it with that model. So we have to ask ourselves, how many treatments are there? There are 1, 2, and 3 treatments. So I'm going to break these 300 people up into 3 groups. Again, using random assignment, and the hat method is just fine.